Okay, serial for March 2023. Let's start. We're immediately going to start with film. There's going to be lots of film in this month's video, but we're going to immediately start with a photo on the left from 1988, which I had taken with a Nikon FE. So I was really young, and with Kodak TMAX 100 film, probably the 50mm f1.2. I find this image interesting. I got it out because of another reason. I was looking into my archives for some friend's photo, and I found this film and this image, which I find interesting because it's in a place where now in Geneva, it's the heights of Geneva, there's buildings that have been built there. So really photography as a memory. Also, it's an interesting way to preserve the feelings, the ideas, the sensations, and here also I found it interesting. It's film. Obviously, I had forgotten about this picture, but because it's physical, I kept it with me, and film conserves pretty well. It's from 1988, so makes me feel old, but it's yeah, it's really as young as it could be when I look at it. On the right, that's a recent photo from a camera I'm testing now, the Leica CL, this joint venture between Minolta and Leica. Here was the Summicron 40mm f2.0 using expired Agfa HDC 100 film. I really underexposed here. I wanted to try to preserve the colors and details of the sun going through the cloud layer. And to me it works, but it's definitely not like this. It doesn't look like this in real. That's also one of the beauties of film. You can really overexpose, but you will get the qualities of the film. You do actually get the same thing with sensors, but I think it's even more marked with film in general. And I think this was a good example of it. Same equipment. The previous picture was in the Jura in Switzerland. Here it's in Reykjavik. This, for me, kind of iconic place in the city near the bay, where you have all those traffic lights. I really liked the pattern, the geometry. It was probably in February by the time I developed the film in March. This really cold and wet environment. Yeah, and on the right, that's a small, I think it's a preschool in Reykjavik with the Christmas lights still on. Late afternoon, the sky falls pretty soon at that time of the year. But yeah, really I like this rendering, this film, really interesting film in my opinion. I wish we had more of those films today. Here experimenting with the Polaroid Go. That's Lomography bought the brand Polaroid, saved it, and they came out with this smaller format square instant film. I have some problems either with the film or with the rolls in my camera, which is a modern camera, but I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. And this film was one of those films I went through the customs many times with those new scanners that really irradiate the film, so it really has some effect. X-rays do have effect on film. Depends which one, more or less, but yeah, beware of this. But I kind of like the rendering, and here trying to use this camera and talking about memories. I like to sometimes document objects or things in my environment that have been taking an important place. And here's that's a mug, a plastic mug that basically got cooked by ultraviolet and broke. And I had the chance to have those two pictures that kind of put them. I created the story, but that's this broken, pot. Meant something to me, and it was a good way of experimenting with this burnt film and see what it rendered, and using this old friend of mine. Anyways, that's experimental. Then again, I'm quite fascinated by those. I'm sort of getting fascinated by those Sigma Foveon sensors. I like the idea of those sensors that don't have a Bayerian filter on them for the color rendering, where they have the red, green, and blue colors above each other, so you don't have this geometrical pattern reconstruction, mathematical reconstruction. This is an old camera. They're really cheap now. It's an SD10. It's probably between 3 and 5 megapixel. I'm not even sure. And I must say the color rendering that's with a 100mm f2.8 Sigma lens that was made for it. I like the color rendering, and I hope this joint venture between Sigma, Panasonic Lumix, and Leica might one day end up with a full frame Leica-like camera with a Foveon sensor. On those two next pictures, very low resolution, but the micro contrast is incredible. And I've read many texts and opinions online where people are kind of like, oh, it doesn't mean anything, this Foveon saying it's just a fad. Honestly, trying it, I feel there's something extra. I like this different rendering. Feels more like film. It does. So yeah, interesting. Yeah. Very more sensual. I don't know why. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels more sensual. I like the CCD rendering. Also, some say it's a fad, but my own experience, I like it. Then going to something different. One of my old projects is a hyper-tight project. It's about representations. It's a conceptual work about fashion and anyways, it's an old work, and I've had let it go for a while. Here I'm restarting this project, continuing and trying to finish it. And I tried this with this model. I tried to refresh the equipment and refresh my practice by still keeping the same feeling. Left is a medium format Leica S camera with a CCD with a 100mm Summicron lens f2.0, and on the right that's with the Polaroid Go and this burnt film. Really experimenting, trying to do things with light, trying to find the feeling again and feel comfortable with this project again. On the left, that's using the flash and some continuous lighting. And then going a little bit more into the usual feel of this project. Again, on the left, that's medium format with 100mm. And on the right, that's Leica. It's a Leica SL that's full frame with a Summicron lens too. That's a Apo 50mm f2.0. Trying to keep the same rendering between my lenses and cameras for this project. But also here, those two pictures, trying some new things. This diptych, this work is mainly diptychs. It's an experimental project that was in Zurich. Restarting the machine was also to try new things and see if I could use the picture on the left. For example, I used paint made for skin for strong makeups. This is definitely not going to be in my project, but I wanted to try, so I just experimented, just went for it with the model, which was a very cool model, and trying lights and trying things to see if it could be integrated in the project. Same thing with the picture on the right. More contrasty things, see if it works. Gave me ideas, refreshed a little bit my will to go forwards with this project. So yeah, great experiment. That's my recommendation also for me and for you. Here we are going back to film on the left. That's the photo. It by itself is not very interesting, but I'm experimenting with a camera. I like the 1:2 format. And that's a Linhof Technorama 612 camera. It works with 120mm film, with 120 film. Actually, that's Lomography Metropolis film, and the surface is huge. So that's where film has a big advantage compared to digital. This is basically 6:12. It's really a very large negative, and I was just practicing with the camera to make it feel comfortable for future shoots, and for me it's really the format I use for my digital photography in the Magnum series. So if you want to know more about that and you don't know it, I have this every month. 2 weeks from now you'll have a new Magnum. It's where I talk about the software I develop for phones, and that's usually the format I use on phones, 1:2 or 2:1. But that's film, very large, and yeah, I like it. And on the right, the two pictures are actually a dual photo, and dual photos is when you take a picture at the same time on front and on the back of the film plane. It happened to be in the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Geneva. And that's using an old Leica S3 camera. There's the cameras that predate the Leica M series, using a 50mm f2. I think it's an f1.5 Summicron. Anyways, an old lens, and using TMAX 3200 film. It's a super compact setup. It's a telescopic lens that you have to open before taking the picture. And I took the picture on front and in the back, just one after the other, to create the dual photo. Same thing here. Here we see better this old school rendering of the lens. Just to say that those old, that's a rangefinder camera, those old cameras are really great. You don't need to have modern equipment to make interesting pictures. And here you have this really old school bokeh and rendering. Then jumping back to digital, again, every pretext I think is every happy pretext is a good pretext to practice or meet people. And here it was just the occasion was the daughter of a good friend who's also a photographer, was doing some horse riding contests, and it was a great occasion to actually see them. And at the same time, yeah, let's use some equipment I don't use that much and just practice a little bit. So I used the Leica SL2. I definitely use all the time, the camera. But here are two lenses I don't traditionally use every day. They're from the R series of Leica. That was the full frame film, 35mm film reflex cameras. The first lens on the left, that's a Vario Elmarit R70-180 f2.8 lens. Quite heavy, but incredibly sharp and yeah, fantastic lens. And the kind of equivalent in terms of rendering, but way heavier. I've used it for plane meetings, old aeronautical meetings. When you need something more, it's 280mm f2.8 Telyt R lens on the right. And yeah, really had lots of fun seeing my friends and doing a few pictures. Here again on the left, that's a 280mm f2.8, and on the right, that's a Elmarit R70-180. Yeah, I really like this kind of rendering from those old lenses from Leica. They're kind of, I'm not going to say cheap, but they're way cheaper than some modern equivalents. If you can find them, they're pretty rare, but really, and if you don't want autofocus, I don't use autofocus usually. Great lenses. Here again on the left and on the right, that's a Vario Elmarit R70-180. On the left, that's obviously during the horse riding festival contest, and on the right, that's on Ushi in Lausanne. That's a sunset. Really interesting, weird lights to me. So I liked that picture. Nice to go and experiment. Here we're still keeping the SL2, this Leica camera, which that's my main workhorse. But here I had decided I was going to London, so we can discuss the traveling a lot, of course. But if you need to, here I was going for another part of my work. When you combine everything, and traveling is a great way to refocus your creativity and test your equipment and use other things, refresh your mind. And that's using the Elmarit M lenses. That's a 90mm f2.5 on those two pictures. London City Airport on the left, and the DLR tube metro to go back to the center of the city from there. I really like the clouds, and I do like the rendering of this line of lenses. For this trip, I had taken the 35mm, the 50mm, and the 90. Here again, the 90mm, same equipment, London. I like the picture on the left because it's kind of weird. I like the feel of it. When I took it, I really tried to maximize the contrasts knowing this sensor, the importance of knowing your sensor. And I think it's also a good example of why there's still some progress to be made in sensor technology. I had really to lower, because I was really front-facing the sun. That's in the morning. And even so, I think I did a good job of how do you say, keeping the lowlights and the highlights relatively good. I'm losing color data. We're losing the colorimetry and the very highlights, and that's where sensors can get better in the future. The dynamic range there's still something to be done. It's a relatively recent camera and sensor, but yeah, that's a good example. It still matters. Progress still matters. And on the right, that's low lights in London on a rainy day. This is a great city. It's in terms of architecture, looks, the people, I find it very stimulating. Architecturally speaking, to me, it's kind of an equivalent to Chicago in the United States. Very interesting architectural choices and lots of contrast, as we can see here in the center of the city. Again, the 90mm f2.5. But also, yeah, London's so varied in terms of urban spaces. That's a little bit north of the center of London. I wasn't just going there for photos. I just took a few shots when I felt like it. I was visiting a friend, and yeah, you get some interesting shots when you have something on you and are ready to take the picture. Then again, that's why I had chosen this equipment. I'm trying to refresh for this hyper-tight project. I'm putting back on tracks, trying to refresh my equipment, but have it still compatible with the looks of the old photos I had taken for that series. And this Elmarit M series of lenses made sense. Here it's again with my continuous lighting equipment and some flashes. Again, great model here, and really working on the rendering, and yeah, every occasion is a good occasion to work on something, and that was interesting. Again, London, the SL2, Elmarit M 90mm f2.5. The picture on the left, that's from the Tate Museum, Tate Modern, overlooking the Thames River. And on the right, that's basically walking up a canal going towards Compton. Yeah, it's a great city. I really highly recommend if you don't know London in terms of experience, of traveling experience and discovering things. For photography, it's fantastic. Jumping to film, in my tests, as you know, I work with lots of cameras, and I was testing the Leica Mini II camera, which is a point and shoot from a long time ago. And here with Bergger Pancro 400 film. The picture on the left, I believe it's in the cinema in Reykjavik, not sure. And the right, that's a botanical garden in Geneva. I always have those point and shoots with some film in them. And when I travel, I just take one and just continue my test. And so that's why I sometimes don't remember where the pictures are from. But I find it's interesting. Those point and shoot cameras are really interesting. And I was really surprised with this Leica Mini II. Of course, here's the looks of those two pictures are again the Bergger Pancro 400. It's got a very contrasty and very special look to it, which I really like. The blacks are really black. I like the look of the Bergger. I really recommend this film. But I was very surprised with the quality of this fully automatic camera. Really nice to shoot, good experience too. It wouldn't be one of my favorites, but I definitely would feel like traveling with it again. Here again, this Leica Mini II. Great geometry, great rendering, precise. Yeah, nothing much to say. Here again, testing those Leica Minis. I had the Mini 2, which we saw before with the Bergger, and I have a Leica Mini 1. I believe it's the same lens. I think it's a 35mm f3.5, but not sure. I'm not even sure about that. But there was the Leica Mini 1, 2, and then the 3, which was a 32mm. But anyways, which had a different lens, obviously. But here it's with a generic film, which is Color Print 100. I couldn't find who made it, probably a generic brand, and which had asked, I would guess Fujifilm here. Definitely not sure, couldn't find the documentation. But really nice warm rendering of this film. And Old Town Geneva on the right, and that's a botanical garden Geneva on the left. Again, same equipment, Leica Mini I and this color print 100 film. Really positively surprised with those Leica Mini cameras. I understand a little bit better why their second-hand price is going up. They're starting to be scarce, but robust experience. Nice to take pictures with and good results. So yeah, not much to say more. On the left, that's the Arve River in Geneva, and on the right, that's near the central station in Geneva, the international sector of the town with those new buildings. Yeah, anyways. Here we're going back to still film, lots of film, as I said. Olympus XA rangefinder camera, this super compact camera I love. And here that's Fujicolor Press 800 film in Reykjavik, the Reykjavik Bay on the left. And on the right, I wanted to try this place. It's kind of a youth hotel. I want to try the feel of it. That's what I do sometimes when I travel. And I like the looks of that bed, so I took the picture. Anyways. And also wanted to see the rendering of this film, this Fujicolor, slightly expired. Here again, by night, it's nice to have the 800 ISO, and it's nice to have the Olympus XA with its exposure measurement. That's really great. And on the left, that's still Reykjavik, probably 1 a.m., the snow falling. And on the right, that's Geneva, difference in climate, with a cherry tree. And again, slow exposure with the XA works pretty fine. Great camera, and I really like the looks of this film too. Sadly, I wish we had more of those films coming out. Change of camera, change of film. Here we're going with the Pentax PC 35 AF. It's a point-and-shoot film from Pentax. I had used it in the past, but I wanted to test it a little bit more for my testing videos, and I wanted to try the Santacolor 100. That's a new film made by a major manufacturer. Santa started by making a 1000 ISO black and white film. Here, I believe it's probably Kodak who makes the film. I don't think it's gold film. I'm not sure. Could be some pro image. Not really sure, but I like the rendering of those colors and the detail that you can get out of it. And you definitely have this Pentax look in the lens. Here again, same equipment, the same Pentax PC 35 AF. Great user experience with this camera. A little bit different, but yeah, once you get a hold of it, it's great. It's a camera that can also be motorized. You can add a motor for the film winding on the side. Not very useful, but you can do it. Here, two photos, one from the Jura mountains on the left, and that's from the Geneva Bay in the international sector, one of those old mansions. But yeah, AF works well, great rendering. I like those Pentax cameras. Here we're going to change. We're going to something older in terms of camera. That's a Leica M2 with a Summicron 28mm f5.6 lens, a classic. So yeah, rangefinder. The M2 had this, the viewfinder rangefinder has guides for the wider angle lenses. That makes a big difference with the M3, which is more suited for 50mm, for example. And that's using a film, expired film, that's Perutz Primera Color 100, probably Agfacolor Vista 100. Looks a little bit like some modern Kodak Ektar film. Really like the rendering, this kind of magenta, purpley looks into colors, but very warm, great rendering, and obviously the lens is great, in my opinion. I like this old school rendering. There's some vignetting, but works great. Here, same equipment, more light in those two scenes. On the left, that's the Vevey Market. And on the right, that's the last porn cinema in Geneva, which is closed, obviously. But I like the looks of this place and kind of want to take this picture, some kind of memory. The old age just leaving, disappearing slowly. Yeah. Anyways, next to picture, going back to digital and London, that's the Leica SL2. The picture on the left, that's near the Olympic Park. We can see the stadium on the left, and I really like this picture. And that's another version from the one I've posted on my Instagram, for example, where I had reframed just to see the building. I think it doesn't say the same story, and this photo has actually two stories. Here we have those workers on the bottom left. We see things are going around this building. There's a sense of movement. Something's going on. The modern, the past. It's at sunset. Really liked it. Again with the Elmarit M90mm, this rendering, modern rendering. And on the right, that's flying above Paris. And yeah, nothing much more to say. I kind of like that picture. And here are the two last pictures for this series for this month. On the left, again, SL2 90mm f2.5, the Elmarit M. Some details from an airport. And on the right, that's probably one of my favorite cameras ever. And the combination I really feel is very different from anything I have other. It's Leica M8 CCD sensor. It's not a full frame. It's the only non-full frame Leica, the first digital Leica, M series Leica. It's an APS-H sensor, and that's got something important to do with the lens. The lens is a super angulon 21mm f4. It's a lens that has a very prominent posterior element, which will damage your camera or not work, even if the shutter doesn't touch it, or the light sensor. It's good on old M film cameras, but one thing is with new digital cameras, even if it fits in, the light rays come so horizontally on the sensor, and because of the width of the sensor, you're going to have some color distortion on the sides. But thankfully to the small size of the APS-H sensor of the M8, which also has a shutter that's way back, you can put it in, and you have this incredible rendering of this super angle, an old super angle and 21mm lens. And that's the art book fair in Reykjavik, where I was presenting my photo books. Great fair, great ambiance, great participants, incredible place. That's a modern art museum in Reykjavik. And yeah, and that's my last picture for this month. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't hesitate to ask questions, post comments, and yeah, propose for the next month's things you want me to talk about. And see you next time.